Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's Lettermen Row. It's Mick Walker. It's Spencer Holbrook. It is something entirely different than what we normally do here. Obviously, the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, your national champion Ohio State Buckeyes, kick off spring practice on Monday. It's a great segue into what matters at Ohio State, and we say that because we can tell what people click on, what people want us to hear, what people want to talk about is football. And the Ohio State basketball season ended last night, Wednesday night, at the hands of the Iowa Hawkeyes in the Big Ten tournament. The Buckeyes will, very much all likelihood not be going to the NCAA tournament. The NIT is not going to happen. The college basketball crown is a new thing that we'll have to talk about here, potentially, if Ohio State chooses to go there, if they've got enough players. So we're going to do a little hoops right now because I know apathy has set in a little bit, which is part of the conversation that we're going to talk about here. I know coaching futures is part of the conversation here. We'll talk about that a little bit. Mick's got a lot of intel on the recruiting side as far as like what the future holds for this program if everybody sticks around. So let's have an honest conversation here, Mick, because everyone cares more about football at Ohio State. That's not a secret. It's almost like your Alabamas, your Auburns, your Georgias, your Texases. Do you know what all those teams have in common? They're all going to the NCAA tournament in basketball. And there's no reason that Ohio State can't be good at basketball, too. We've seen it under Thad Matta. We saw it, under Jim O'Brien, I guess. But, that was kind of under different circumstances. Even Chris Holtmann took this team to the NCAA tournament a few times. They were in the Big Ten tournament championship game. They, had a shot to win Big Ten regular season titles. Like, they were good under Chris Holtmann, but they were not good enough. And so they went in a different direction. It's Jake Diebler's team now. And year one under Jake Diebler is basically over. Nobody's going to care about the postseason. Even if they play in the CBC, I guess, the college basketball crown, nobody's going to care about it as far as fans are concerned because they're going to wonder if Julian Sains was the real deal or not. So that's how this works. Like, we know football is king here. But let's talk hoops. Mick, what went wrong here? Last night was not a disaster, I guess. Yeah, it was a disaster. I mean, they beat this team by 20 at home when they honored the national champion football team 2 months ago. And then they lose in the first round with their NCAA tournament life on the line. What went wrong?
I just think general lack of identity, whether it's offensive or defensive. I don't think there was a ton of great offensive sets consistently. I think everybody, you and I have talked about that throughout the season. I think the Lettermen Lounge message board brought it up consistently. Just the general lack of what they wanted to do and sets to go to on offense. I think a great example is, Michigan in that game when they came into the shot, Michigan was down or tied game with Ohio State. They ran two different sets to Roddy Gill Jr., the Ohio State transfer. He gets 4 points on those two sets, and now they close out the game and win and beat the rival team, Ohio State. And then defensively, they never were able to play anything. They have no real physical imposing presence in the middle. That's another thing on offense. They have no real post presence other than I think Devin Royal's a good player offensively. I think he can defend pretty well. But again, he's 6'6", so he's not going to be able to guard a lot of power forward straight up. Their center was Sean Stewart. He's about 6'8". I get he has an incredible vertical jump, but he doesn't have the length to go with it that necessarily makes for his lack of height. So just overall lack of identity, and I think just there wasn't much. There never was really a lot of momentum throughout the season, which typically happens throughout basketball seasons. So when you don't have momentum, you don't have an identity, it's hard to sustain any sort of high level of success. Like if we think of the time is of this season at Michigan State, they don't shoot the ball very well. They shoot it often. They don't shoot it very often, but they don't shoot it well. But their identity has been and will continue to be under time is of playing good defensive rebounding. That's something that sustains. I don't know what you could sit there and say is Jake Diebler's identity as a head coach at Ohio State.
Yeah, through 1 year, there isn't one. And that's really disappointing because you want somebody to come in and at the very least establish a clear identity of direction for the program, something that's going to that you're going to hang your hat on with some momentum heading into year two. Here's where that's problem number one. Here's problem number two. And again, I'll just say it, there are people who cover the Ohio State basketball program in more detail than we do because we know what people care about. We talk football. But we also care about Ohio State basketball. I know everyone wants Ohio State basketball to be good. When it was good, people cared. And so, the word of the day, just like the word of the day a year ago at this time when Chris Holtmann got fired and Jake Diebler with apathy. Here's where things went wrong for Ohio State, in my opinion. You lose Zed Key, and you kind of let him walk out the door. Fine. Okay? He goes to Dayton. He's a decent player. I don't think he would have moved mountains this year for Ohio State. But he would have been a physical – he would have been 5 fouls in the middle, I guess, if you want to put it that way. You lose Felix Okpara. who got a bag to go to Tennessee. He's really good. And you replaced him with Aaron Bradshaw, who I'm sure Aaron Bradshaw's a nice guy. Not what Ohio State needed in the middle. Very skinny, lanky, not a Big Ten center at 7'1". He just doesn't get it done for Ohio State. He was a 5-star guy who went to John Calipari in Kentucky with a lot of potential, but I think that is still untapped, and I don't know if it will ever be tapped because he just doesn't seem to have what it takes to play center in the Big Ten at 7'1". The other big that you brought in was Sean Stewart, who is one of the most athletic people I've ever seen dribble a basketball. The problem is there are times where he struggles to dribble a basketball. There are times where there are struggles on the offensive side with, post moves. There's not a lot there. On the defensive side, you're lacking there. And this isn't a knock on those guys. This isn't just to tear them down, but this is the truth. And what you lost in the post presence, you didn't make up in the transfer portal. Oh, by the way, you probably didn't need excuse me. You didn't need the guards that you brought in from the transfer portal, especially Michi Johnson. He's a shot taker. Not only did he take probably a few too many shots in the beginning of the season, he didn't take any shots the last 3 months of the year because he hasn't been on the team. And it was almost like a reunion that I never seemed to fit in my eyes and didn't work out. Micah Parrish, I thought, was a really good addition. To be honest, a feather in Jake Diebler's cap, I guess, if you want to call it that. I thought Micah Parrish played well, a good quality addition. It shows that there are some hits for Jake Diebler to have in the transfer portal. And then Quez Glover, decent player from Kansas State, did not make a difference for this team. And so in year one of Jake Diebler, when you're trying to elevate and make Bruce Thornton, the feature of your offense, he's a great player. I really enjoy watching him play basketball. He deserves better than what he's getting right now. And I hope Jake Diebler surrounds him with things that make him better next year. John Mobley Jr., an absolute hit for Jake Diebler on the recruiting trail. Devin Royal is really blossoming into what I think could be a first-team All-Big Ten player next year. The portal was not good to this team. And so without an identity and with lackluster portal additions, especially down low, this is the result. You're out physical in Big Ten play, and you don't have an identity, and now you're sitting on the outside looking into the NCAA tournament when you had a must-win situation, and basically it was win and get in against Iowa last night.
Yeah, I think you and I have talked about it again on Lettermen Lounge message board, offline, whatever it is. I think Jake Diebler, as a first-year head coach, got some, I don't know if it's bad advice from people inside the program, outside the program, whatever it was when it comes to some of these transfer portal additions. I think he kind of took some guys where it was just purely stats and stars rankings instead of taking guys that fit together. Like if you look at Bruce Thornton, like how you talked about him, Bruce is a great guy playing off of pick and rolls. Even if Felix Akbar didn't have a great post-up game, which he was improving at, Felix was great as a lob threat. Aaron Bradshaw does not want to be a lob threat. He was very much like to set a pick and then pop out for a three. And that just doesn't mesh with what Bruce Thornton wants to do. Even at 7 foot, he's not a great lob threat. So then you don't have a great lob threat for the pick and roll situations. You don't have anybody that can post up, like you said. I think Sean Stewart, if you were to say he's a backup 4, backup 5, and he can just come off the bench, provide energy, athleticism, minutes, that's a great role for him. But to be a starting center for a Big Ten caliber team was just not sustainable. I mean, they tried to make it work, and at times it looked like it might work, but it just wasn't there. And like you said, I think Michi Johnson, I guess if he meshes with Bruce Thornton, ideally, it might have worked, but still, it was hard to see that marriage working together. So then you press John Mobley Jr. as a freshman into a starting role when he as a secondary ball handler, and it faded. It was a roller coaster ride for him, really. I think there was shots he got to take yesterday against Iowa that didn't fall, that earlier in the season he was hitting, and then I think it just kind of wore on him. So overall, the whole construction of it was just kind of, I don't think it was great, and I think it's going to be up to Jake Diebler to kind of take the ball, make his own plan, and figure out what the best way to construct this roster is in year 2, or else there might not be a year 3. I think is kind of how we've talked about it.
Now, I do think that Diebler's going to make some adjustments after this. I think he's going to have to. I think there's going to be some conversations. I think there's going to be some hard conversations. He's going to have to make real adjustments to this roster in order to compete. Because if he doesn't, like you said, I don't think there will be a year 3 for him. I think It will be a short-lived tenure, and Ohio State will have to hit the reset button because they truly didn't hit the reset button after Holtmann. And hindsight's 2020, obviously, but in the moment, I didn't think that it was the worst idea to take. Okay, Chris Holtmann hadn't been to the NCAA tournament in 2 years, but there's some foundation there of a program that you could see, like, okay, if you can just elevate this, it could be good. And so is Diebler the right guy to do that? At the time, there's a case to be made for that. I know everybody in hindsight says, oh, the guy with no experience, you hired it was a lazy hire, things like that. In that moment, I thought there were some parts of it that made sense. He has to be better. Has to be better. Offensively, they were not good enough this year with the sets. I think that's, what he does best. He's got to be better at that. Oh, hit my mic. Defensive, I'm getting a little animated here. Defensively, they just have to be better, point blank. Like, they were not good enough defensively last night. And in a win or go home game, to see them struggle on the defensive end like that, really tough scene. Really tough scene to dwindle in the final 5 minutes at Indiana and then to lose this game. It is just a sour, sour ending to this season. Now, again, nobody's going to care about this. There's a possibility Ohio State could go to the College Basketball Crown event, which is an NIL-driven event for teams that don't make the NCAA tournament out in Las Vegas. The Buckeyes meet the net requirement. I think there's a Ken Pom requirement in there. They meet all those requirements as one of the Big Ten teams that could get in there. Will they have enough players? Do players enter the transfer portal? Because do the graduating seniors want to play with this team one more time? Like, those are questions that you have to ask. But again, even if they play those games, like, we'll cover them and we'll talk about them on the board, but nobody's going to care. Like, the apathy has set in on the 2024-2025 Ohio State Buckeyes. The 2025-2026 version of this program, there might already be some apathy there from fans. But we'll talk a little bit about it. Mick, first, I got to tell you about this football. You guys know it. You love it. The college football playoff logo, the gray fractal swoosh. It's the official ball Ohio State used in the national championship game because we know that you love football way more than you love basketball, Ohio State fans. There's some of you that love basketball more. We know that the vast majority of you. Go get your hands on one of these footballs today. Get biggameusa.com/Buckeyes. That's biggameusa.com/Buckeyes to get your hands on one of these footballs. Of course, high and tight, ball security, job security. This is the football Ohio State used in the national championship game. You can own one today at biggameusa.com/Buckeyes. Additionally, you know it. You love it. Best fit, best feel. Come on.
Row back.
Nick, they got an Azalea collection out now in honor of the Masters. Oh, my God. Friday might be a bad day for the bank account. I'm just letting you know.
They need to send a letter to Miss Holbrook just to apologize to what they've done to your family.
They definitely have to, because we might not eat based on how much money I'm about to spend at Rowback. You get 20% off, a generous 20% off when you use the code Lettermen20, Lettermen20 at checkout at rhoback.com. Lettermen20. Go get Rowback hoodies. Go get Rowback shorts, pants, polos, hats. The Azalea collection is incredible. All right, Mick, the future of the Ohio State basketball program. Who's staying? Who's going? We do not, Lettermen Row standard, we do not prognosticate, we do not predict who will go in the transfer portal. Will it surprise you, though, if any of these core pieces of this team, let's call it the 5 that you think they can't lose in, and I still lump Taysom Chapman, who missed the entire season, into that group, Devin Royal, John Mobley Jr., Bruce Thornton. Any reason to believe that any of those guys you think will be back next year or will hit the road for next year?
Obviously, I think with John Mobley Jr., he's a Reynoldsburg guy. Devin Royal's a Pickerington Central guy. Bruce Thornton's now been in Columbus for 3 years. Like, I think those proximities, those ties to the program. Jake Diebler, if he's still going to be the head coach next year, he's the same guy that recruited Bruce Thornton. He recruited all 3 of those guys. So those connectivity parts of it will be important. Jason Chapman, he's been here multiple seasons while dealing with injury. Does he want to stick it out and be able to finally suit up for the Scarlet and Gray? I'm not entirely sure. You would hope so. I think if you could bring Sean Stewart back to be a backup, I think that'd be another, like we talked about earlier, I think that'd be a good addition. I don't see a reason why a guy like Colin White, who I think has some potential as a rotation wing or a rotation guard, why he would leave. And then beyond that, I don't know. Like, coming in, you have Dorian Jones, who plays for Richmond Heights in Cleveland, Ohio. Like, he's a top 100 level kid. He can play a similar role to Colin White. He can play the defense really well. He shoots the ball well. Like, I think he's I don't mean to interrupt you.
Is he a 3-and-D guy?
Yeah, I think that's really what it is. 3-and-D, kind of a 2 guard type of thing. He's going to be about 6'5". He's probably not tall enough to guard a pure 3 because he's not 6'6", 6'7", 6'8" type of range. But the guy that is 6'8" is Amari Bynum, who plays at Link Academy Prep. He's from Omaha, Nebraska. I think everything seems to be fine with him. He just won a high school national championship with the Link Academy there. He's not playing right now because he has a hand injury that he suffered late in the season, but I still believe everything's locked in with him coming to Ohio State. He's a guy that I've compared to EJ Liddell. I think he can play an EJ Liddell type of Devin Royal role. But again, if you don't have a 5-man to go with that, because I think you can use a 4-man as an offensive centerpiece sometimes. Devin Royal did in the USC game, help him win the game. But if you don't have a lob threat, a defensive threat at that 5 position, it doesn't really matter. And I don't think Aaron Bradshaw is that guy. I don't believe Ivan Nagroven is that guy. I don't believe Austin Parks is that guy. So when you have that coming in, if you have those are your 3 men at center right now, I think you need somebody else that can kind of stand up and hopefully complement some of these guys that you look to retain when it comes to the roster for next season.
Yeah, and it's not just on Jake Diebler. It's on the foundation. It's on the folks who care about this basketball program, the donors, the boosters, to put the money together to go get good quality bigs. I truly think the guards are good on this team. And even Devin Royal, who can step outside and stretch the floor a little bit as a bigger body, I like the Thornton, Mobley, Royal combination there that you can build around. But if you don't have a 4 and a 5 that you trust, if Amari Bynum's not going to be that guy as a freshman, go get a 4 that you trust. If you don't believe that Ivan Nagroven is going to be ready to play in year 2, or Austin Parks is going to be ready at any point in his career, or as a developmental piece that Chris Holtman took from up in my neck of the woods, or if you don't believe that you're prepared to move forward with Aaron Bradshaw and Sean Stewart as starters, you have to spend the money to go get a big. And to be honest, this is an honesty show, you went the cheaper route when it comes to hiring a head coach. Now you have to invest in the roster. The first set of investments did not pay off. Aaron Bradshaw was not good enough. Sean Stewart, good piece. I think athletic, like you said, energy and athleticism off the bench could be great for this team. Not a starting caliber player for Ohio State. You have to go get bigs that can make a difference. Michigan hired an expensive coach and went and found cheaper mid-major guys that have come in and made a difference at 7 foot. They have 2 7-foot guys who have made a massive difference in Big Ten play. Now, I think their guards are bad enough where they could be bounced early from the NCAA tournament. But the bigs have made a difference in Big Ten play. And what I'm saying is, I like these guards enough where I said if they made the NCAA tournament, I thought there was a chance they could get hot, because what I look for in NCAA tournament teams on FanDuel Sports is good guard play. North Carolina won national championships not because of the bigs, because they had great guard play for years. Duke wins because they get generational players inside, but they also have great guard play at all times. Look at the teams that win in March Madness, the Villanova teams, even Auburn right now. Their guards are so good. These Ohio State guards could have made some noise in the NCAA tournament, but the bigs in Big Ten play are not good enough. So you need to have bigs that can win in Big Ten play and guards that can win in the NCAA tournament. Ohio State, I think, has guards that can play at a high level in the NCAA tournament, but they can't get there because the bigs aren't good enough in the Big Ten. Does that make sense? I think if they get bigs, I like this team next year. If they go out and they get guys who are former 5-star guys who just have potential that are not going to live up to it, because this was predictable with Bradshaw and Stewart, then I don't have faith that they'll be any better next year.
Yeah, and I think if we reference Michigan State, who's finished atop the Big Ten standings, they have 2 7-footers as well, or guys that are 6'10 plus. Evan Zapala, I believe, who played at Longwood University last year, that transferred. He's not averaging a ton of points, but he's a big dude, lob threat, rebounder that comes in and plays defense for him. And behind him, they have Carson Cooper, who's a walk-on 7-footer that I believe played from was in the state of Michigan before he went to IMG Academy. You have to just get, whether it's a post, you don't need Zach Edey post presence that's going to get 50 post ups a game. But what they have right now, big wise, was just never going to complement it. They have, if Felix Akpara would have stayed, this team would have been much better defensively and would have fit much better with what Bruce Thornton and John Mobley Jr. do well when it comes to the pick and roll game. They just didn't attack the portal in the big spots the correct way, it seems. And not that it seems, they didn't do that the correct way. And now you're looking at the end of the season here, and you're looking at a time where we talked about it before the podcast, this 2026 recruiting class where you're supposed to be kind of like hunting down these big guys, because there's first time since 2016 where they've had 2 native Ohioans in the top 50 with Anthony Thompson and Marcus Johnson, who's already committed. And now you're going to have to recruit them, go beat blue blood programs, try and up the NIL dollars to get these guys without having an NCAA tournament on your resume when it was literally in your hands. But then you lost the likes of Northwestern and Iowa and other schools down the stretch, and now you're fighting. You're having to just sell them on potential going into the second year of a head coach's tenure, which is not where you want to be when you have 2 top 50 kids in your backyard.
Correct. The building blocks were there. Ohio State stumbled up them. And now the Buckeyes have to pick up the pieces, figure out where to go forward in year 2 under Jake Diebler, as long as he gets year 2. We're going to cover this pretty aggressively with the transfer portal. People care about the portal. People care about what the future is for the program. Right now, I do not think that there's any appetite for the college basketball crown. We know the Buckeyes will in all likelihood not go to the NIT. And we know in very much all likelihood they will not be going to the NCAA tournament thanks to that loss to Iowa. This has been 20 minutes of basketball talk. If you don't like it, let us know. We'll just start talking about football again. On Friday, we're going to talk about spring football. We're going to do predictions. We'll do depth chart breakdown. A lot to get to on Friday here at Lettermen Row. Until then, go over to lettermenrow.com right now. Sign up, $1 for your first week. That gets you the first week of spring ball basically for free. It's just $1. It's way cheaper than a cup of coffee, unless you go to like Speedway or something. Speedway, not a sponsor. If you want to talk to a Speedway, come on. That's Mick Walker on the other side of your screen. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Go to lettermenrow.com. $1 for your first week. Go to biggameusa.com/Buckeyes. Get your Ohio State National Championship football. Go to Rowback, 20% off Letterman20 with the code RHOBACK.com. Letterman20. And we'll see you guys over at lettermenrow.com, where we're breaking down Ohio State football and Ohio State hoops.